In 2010, along with my dear sweet wife, daughter, and son-in-law, we were back. We went to Pearl Harbor. I was there with, I think it was about 120 other survivors there. I think every one of them, down to the last man, had been back to Pearl a number of times in those passing years. For me, that was the first time back to Pearl Harbor in 64 years. After attending the remembrance ceremony that morning, the rededication of the Visitor Center, we boarded one of those white boats, went out aboard the USS Arizona Memorial. Standing there on the deck of that memorial, look over the side, the hull of that vessel resting there on the bottom of the harbor, then all those names there on the honor wall, and know that those are the names of 1,177 crew members whose earthly remains are still down there, still aboard that vessel. It was a lot different than when I saw it explode that long ago Sunday morning, or when I passed by it on the Liberty boat each and every time I left or came back to Ford Island, or during the balance of the war as I was serving on other ships as I went to or from other duty stations in the South Pacific. It was altogether different. The following morning, in the accompaniment of a naval historian, which had been arranged months in advance, we were able to go to some of the highly restricted areas on Ford Island. On the way there, we passed by or stopped at the USS Utah Memorial, paid our respects, honor, and remembrance to all those crew members still aboard that vessel. Then around to the harbor inlet end of the island where the old PBY Catalina twin-engine flying boat patrol squadrons were stationed. I got once again to stand on the very spot where that first bomb fell that morning. Standing there, you know, and thinking back, it was almost like it was all happening all over again. I wanted to get away from there. I asked that historian, could we go back inside building 54? It's the only hangar still standing on that end of the island. The other two are gone now. Anyway, he said, sure. So there was a small crew working in there, and even though it's a restricted building, they let us in because we had that historian with. I wanted to get back up in that office if I could, because somewhere there that morning, either in that office where that bomb fragments or whatever, machine gun bullets, whatever got to me, in that ditch out there behind the hangar, or in the gun blister of that PBY airplane firing there, somewhere there that morning I lost that 17-year-old sailor. I never again found him. You know, I went to my duty station that morning. According to my records, I was a 17-year-old naive sailor boy trying to be the very best military man that I could be. By the time that day was over, I felt more like about a 34-year-old combat vet. If you know what I mean, something like that can take your youth away from you very, very quickly. Anyway, I asked him, I said, could we go around the backside of the hangar? He said, sure. So as we passed around what would be the southeast or the end of that building, I was able to point out to my dear sweet wife, that historian, my daughter and son-in-law, the very window pane that stuff would have had to come through to get to me, because I was sitting with my back close to the window. My shoulders would have been about window height. If you're looking at that end of the building, there's a group of windows, a column, a group of windows, another column, another group of windows. The third group of windows from the left, the bottom window pane and about the center of those group of windows. Those window panes are of a lighter color than the old milky colored ones were. When we got around the backside of the hangar, I'm kicking around out there looking around. He said, what are you looking for anyway? I said, well, I'm looking for some signs of a construction ditch that was out here somewhere that we were ordered into and then threatened with military discipline when we left to go put up a defense. He said, wait a minute, there's something real funny here. Tell me that again. So I told him exactly what happened, and I'm thinking he's disbelieving me. So I told him, I said, and sir, what I'm telling you is the honest to God's truth. I'll swear to it on a stack of Bibles, Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl Gate Price, Articles of Faith, Words of Wisdom, and on my dead mother's grave. He said, oh, no, I believe every word you're telling me. But he said, what's funny is of all the people that I have talked to down through the years who were here that morning, some of them a number of times, you're only the second guy to ever mention that ditch. He said the first guy was just yesterday. He was in VP 24. I said, well, 24 was on that end of the hangar, 23 was on this end. Well, I'll tell you what, if I had stayed in that ditch that morning, or if I had got back in that ditch when they threatened me with military discipline for doing so, if I had spent that morning in that ditch as so many did, I would not be standing here proudly before you today and sharing that experience with you. When we got home from that event, my dear sweet wife said to me, what was it like to go back there after all these years? I hadn't really thought about it before. You know, when I left the Navy, I put all of that behind me. I sealed all of those feelings up in some kind of put them away, and we didn't even talk about it, you know. We went, the first time I ever talked about it was in '08. I was asked to come and share my experience with a small group of young people. It was only supposed to be about 14 or 16 guys. When we got there, they had 80 chairs set out. There was standing room only. Anyway, when we got home from that event, one of our children, I don't know which one it was, but the oldest one would have been 51 at the time, and the youngest would have been, in his 40s, told his mother, he said, I didn't know Dad was a Pearl Harbor survivor. So you see, we didn't talk about it very much. Anyway, so when we got home, you know, and I started thinking about it, boy, and those thoughts started rushing into my head, and I knew that if I didn't write them down, I'd lose them. So I'd grab a piece of paper. We might be sitting at the table eating. I'd push the plate aside, and I'd write down what I was thinking, or I'd be out in the backyard in my small shop working. By the way, I still work. I'm only 92. Why not? You know, I provide a specialty service to a construction company that has about 600 pieces of rolling stock, and this past April 3rd, this won't mean much to any of you, but it means a lot to me. On that day, April 3rd, I had been a working, wage-earning, tax-paying, service-providing, productive, contributing, and self-supporting member of my generation for 75 consecutive years. And We just delivered a finished project yesterday, and I'll have more in a short time, so I'm well on my way to my 76th year. Anyway, it was no time at all, and I had a huge pile of those little notes. I figured I better get these organized. I better get them together. I better get them correlated so they'll mean something to somebody. And I'm going to share it with you here today. For me, it seems to work better if I put them in a small group of verses rather than in a story like that. And those of you who have been to Pearl, I'm sure there are some of you here who have. Listen carefully and see if it reminds you of what you saw and felt, bound to have felt while you were there. Those of you who have yet to go, I would encourage you to go at your earliest possible opportunity. And if you'll remember what we say here today, maybe it will help to prepare you for what you will see and what you are bound to feel while you were there. I've called it a tour of remembrance. From within those rusting hulls of sunken ships, reminders of what used to be, echo calls to remember from those there entombed that freedom is never free. For those who answer duty's call in the air, on land, or at sea, where liberties and freedoms come under threat, that's where they choose to be. They all gave some gave all. Those liberties and freedoms to save, but those valued treasures can only remain if protected by the gallant and the brave. The bombs blast, the cannons roar, the sights and sounds of battle, the cries of the wounded, the sighs of the dying, amid bursts of machine gun rattle, the fires, flames, the burning airplanes, the sight of sinking ships, with death raining from the skies right before our eyes. How could we ever forget? Some men guns put up a fight of victory hoped to gain. They stood their ground, then many with their ships went down, and down there they shall forever remain. Those shipmates and buddies, forever they're lost, never to breathe air again, must always be honored and forever remembered, or their sacrifices will have been in vain. Some saw it all, got involved, each in his own way, and for those who did and still survive, it's like only yesterday. We've grown old, tried to move on, things we've tried to forget, but try as we will, those memories linger still. And for some, it's not over yet. Our season past, the time draws near. The last survivors will have faded from sight. Then comes each following 7th of December, will there always be those who will care enough not only to remember, but to remember and then go to the top of Mount Diablo on that night and light the light. I have a short request, and I think I can speak for all who have served, donned that uniform, put themselves in harm's way to protect, provide, and preserve our liberties and our freedoms. When our journey here has ended and you've laid us down to rest, know that we've valued your love and your friendships. They've been the very best. Don't let sorrow cloud your pathways. Cheerfully greet each coming dawn, joyful for all that we have shared. Life must go on. Don't send us loads of flowers or stand by our graves and cry. Come see us while we're living. Don't wait until we die. And someday in the great hereafter, who knows just where or when, we'll be missing you much and we'll be waiting until we meet again. Your life must go on. For those of you who, along with Memorial Day, how many of you recognize that this past Memorial Day was the 150th anniversary of that event? First celebrated at Waterloo, New York in 1866 as a way to remember to honor 58 of their own citizens who had lost their lives in the battles of that time. If you're looking for an easy and convenient way, another time, to honor and to remember all those who have sacrificed their lives for our liberties and our freedom, not just those at Pearl Harbor. If you will make yourselves available sometime between sunset and on December the 7th and sunrise on December the 8th, find yourselves a vantage point from where you can see the top of Mount Diablo. If you will watch that beacon as it rotates and sends its brighter and broader beam of remembrance out across all the valleys below, if you will put yourselves in the right frame of mind, and if you will listen very, very carefully, not only with your ears, but with grateful hearts and respectful mind, then you too, as those of us who have been involved so often do, you may hear their cries. You may hear their pleas. Remember us. Remember us. We gave our lives while in service to you. Thank 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 you.